Hi, folks. Hope everybody's doing well. We're just waiting for a few people to show up. A lot of people keep coming in, so I want to give them just a couple minutes to get settled. I appreciate it. Thank you all for being here. All right. More people keep showing up. Keeps coming. Wonderful. There's that. All right. Well, I'm not gonna penalize everybody who's here early and on time, so I'm gonna get started. And as people come up, or come in, I'm just gonna let them in, and that'll be that. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate it. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be able to speak to all of you. Um, it's an exciting topic. It's something really near and dear to my heart and to what I do, and I'm really glad to be able to share it with you all. So thank you. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, the sharing is okay. Thumbs up. All good there. Okay, great. Good deal. And there's going to be time for questions and stuff at the end. So if anything comes up along the way, just make a note, and I'll open up to questions at the end. So thank you. So let's talk. Let's see. Who am I? Why are you talking? Why are you listening to me in the first place? My name is Michael. I'm the founder and CEO of Giant Leaps Learning. Um, I've been a technology entrepreneur for the last 22 years or so, sort of on the front lines, watching the speed and the rate of change increase. And my co-founder, my wife, who couldn't be here today, she's an IEC herself. She built a number of learning centers in San Diego. She's an educator, built a number of learning centers in San Diego, and they specialize in educational therapy and dyslexia and reading remediation and things along those lines. So between the two of us, we had so many conversations about the challenges in education and where the world is going and the gaps in between those two things. And that's the reason that why we're here and the reason why we're talking about future proofing teens. Um, and really, what happened was 6 years ago when our daughter was born, we started to really have very focused conversations on how we were going to prepare her for this world ahead of us. And I started to realize that it was going to look very different, and started to ask, I wonder what it was going to look like when she's my age, when my little girl Scarlett is 44. I'm 44. And I think it's going to be a dramatically different looking world than we see today. And I don't believe that the traditional educational system is preparing our kids to be leaders in that world. So my wife and I started and built Giant Leaps Learning to fill in the gaps and solve that. So that's why you're talking to me today. Some of the things that we're going to cover. We'll talk about what we feel are some of the challenges in traditional education. We'll talk a little bit about what our program does to solve it. I want to explore some of the challenges that we know that IECs face in particular, and then a couple of principles that we believe are principles for future proofing teens. So yeah, let's jump in. Um, this is sort of like our founding principle on some level. Traditional education is not preparing our kids for success in a rapidly changing world. And the question is, why weren't we talking about future proofing teens uh, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? I'm 44. So when I was 13, why weren't we talking about that? And I think the answer is that the world wasn't changing as quickly as it is today. And that's the reason that Giant Leaps exists. And that's the reason that I hope you guys are very, very busy because the world is changing very, very rapidly. And it's going to take a different mindset and a different set of skills and tools to be successful in the future. Um, let's look at this. So this is sort of kind of a joke, but it's also meant to illustrate something. That modern humans have been around for what, roughly 200,000 years. And 130 years ago, we were still riding horseback, if you can believe that. 200,000 years we've been here, and 130 years ago, we're still riding horseback. The first controlled air flight was only 120 years ago in 1903. When you think of like the magnitude of how little, how short amount of time that our rapid acceleration of innovation has been happening, it's very, very recent. And that's really important to why we're talking about future proofing teens. Let's look at this. In the last 50 years alone, we landed on the moon, give or take 50 years. We landed on the moon. The first cell phone was invented. The internet was born. GPS was launched. Wi-Fi was made available, and the iPhone was released. And that's an important one. That's the democratization of information was because of the smartphone. So that's a really incredible and important innovation in human history. And what I want you to feel from this all is that the speed of innovation is rapidly accelerating. And that's incredibly important for a number of reasons, and I'll share. So let's just look at this for a second. Today, we can access the entire planet's collective information instantly on our phones. Somebody in sub-Saharan Africa can find the same information that you can find on your iPhone. That is democratized information at scale. That's today. We can speak to anyone in any language anywhere in the world in real time, and I mean that very literally. I was traveling to Italy not too long ago, and through my Google Pixel buds, I can talk in English and hear the other person speaking in Italian, and it comes through my buds as in English. That is bananas. That's today, right? Um, we can 3D print human organs. An ear was printed not too long ago, and a liver was printed not too long ago. Both, I don't know what you call it, installed or whatever the word is, implanted healthily and happily. And that's today. Virtual reality is used in remote surgery. My mother-in-law just had a kidney replaced a couple of 3 months ago, and it was done by she's in San Diego, and it was done by a surgeon in Philadelphia. That's crazy. That's today. Going on today. Um, so technology is accelerating every industry, blurring the lines of science fiction and reality. 92% of the world's population today has a smartphone. In 16 years, we went from nobody having one to almost the entire planet having a smartphone. And the question that for the last couple of years that I kept asking myself was, what's next? What's coming next that's going to have as much or more of an impact on the world, on workforce, on how we communicate, how we live, learn, and work, all those things? And in November, I got my answer at least. And I don't know if you folks have been tracking or hearing what's happening with OpenAI, ChatGPT, GPT-3, these large language models in AI. This is this decade's um, iPhone moment. It is just democratized access to artificial intelligence. Pandora's box was just kicked wide open. We have no idea what this is going to look like in 5 or 10 years, but it is going to be bananas. And not to belabor the point, but just let's look at a couple of these things for a moment. So if that's today, what's tomorrow going to look like given the trajectory and the speed of acceleration of AI and all these disruptive technologies? Virtual reality is at some point going to be indistinguishable from reality. Um, Planes, trucks, and cars, self-driving. We see that today. We can completely prevent and even reverse human aging. They're spending billions of dollars on reversing aging right now. Curing it is how that industry calls it, and they're making progress. It's so I don't want to belabor all this, but I hope you feel by this point that the world of tomorrow is going to look very, very different. And if you believe that, then this picture should should make you uncomfortable, because school on some level often still looks like this. Not all schools, but a lot of them still do. And the question is, are we preparing our kids to be leaders in that future that we just described, with schools that look like this, with digitizing textbooks? Is that the solution? I don't believe it is. Let's look at a couple of points. The world is changing faster than it ever has before, and the world and the workforce needs are a completely moving target at this point. Teens lack 21st century and leadership skills. As somebody who's hired people for the last 22 years, this is scary and sad and it challenging. This is a sad one. Teen depression and anxiety are at an all-time high. That one really bothers me, and it's just a sad state of where we are right now. And traditional education just isn't changing fast enough to position our kids for success and relevance in the workforce that they're going to enter in the next 10 or 20 years. It just can't keep up. It wasn't designed to. It just can't keep up. It's not nimble. And I'm just continuing to add people into the call. This is a quote that I love from a friend of mine at McKinsey. I don't think there's any way we can accurately say what skills and competencies students will need 15 years from now. That's why it's incumbent that we prepare young people for a world of constant uncertainty. I think this was really well illustrated, not happily for a lot of people, but during COVID. When COVID happened, it pulled the rug out from so many people, and a lot of people, I don't know what the expression is, but the tide went out, and a lot of people were left with their pants down. They weren't able to adapt and be agile and adjust quickly enough, and that skill right there is what I really believe we need to develop in our next generation of kids and leaders, is the ability to adapt and be agile, because the world is only going to increase the speed of change. So we've talked about the speed of change, and this almost certainty that it's happening, and going to continue to happen. So how do we solve for that? We know why we need future-proof kids. Now let's look at what a future-proof kid, well, at least what we believe a future-proof kid is. So there's sort of three components to our framework that make up the 21st century leader. Self-awareness. It all starts with self-awareness for us. We want kids to know themselves. If they know their strengths, if they know their interests, that's the beginnings of a foundation of confidence. And that turns into resilience, and that translates into reduced anxiety. So this is a really, really important one, and a core one that is it's just not part of what school is, unfortunately. Global awareness. Global awareness is not social issues. It's not knowing what's going on with Me Too or with Black Lives Matter or Blue Line or any of that stuff. This is about a student being engaged in the conversation about where the world is going, right? We've just kind of established that AI is here, that virtual reality is here, that there are forces and technologies at play that are going to change their workforce, that are going to completely upend career opportunities. If someone wants to be relevant in the workforce of tomorrow, they should have some ideas about what tomorrow is going to look like, and at least be curious about it. So that's what global awareness is for us. Critical thinking, creative problem solving skills. Do we need better test takers? I mean, is that what we really need to build? I don't believe we need better test takers. I think we need better problem solvers. I believe we need people who know how to find information, who know how to discriminate between good and bad information, and know how to use that information to make better decisions. That sort of 3 point idea right there is so critical to success in now and in the future for kids. This is the core of 21st century skills. They used to call a lot of these soft skills. I think it's been renamed durable skills now. An interesting fact is 7 of the 10 most requested skills in job postings today are what's called the durable skills: leadership, creativity, growth mindset, collaboration, communication, etc. These skills are not taught in schools today explicitly. I think that's a problem. With these skills, kids end up more prepared to be leaders and more prepared to be successful in the future. So we've talked about the speed of innovation. We've talked about what I believe a future-proof kid is and it is made up of. And part of our solution. So what do we do about it? What is Giant Leaps doing about it? And it's almost as simple as this. We teach kids how to think, not what to think. We give them tools and frameworks for being curious, for accessing accessing the information about themselves and learning who they are. It's an online enrichment program for high school students, is the core of it. Prepares teens for success in college careers and life beyond. And we want to do it with less anxiety. And the three components of it are is it's delivered through a combination of one-on-one coaching. We've got a completely individualized, adaptive, and what we call a prescriptive 21st century curriculum. And it's got the technology platform is AI powered, so it delivers information based on a number of factors of who the student is to increase engagement. Because our view is if you get a kid curious and engaged, you can teach them anything. That's the very first foundational step. And that's what our program and that's what we're always trying to do is get kids to lean in to these conversations about learning, about where the world is going. So having over the years, having worked with hundreds of IECs, these are some of the challenges that we see that you probably face. So you're working with students, you're trying to get them into schools, you're trying to prepare them to be successful, to be better test takers, to do all these different things. These are some of the challenges that we've seen. These kids lack differentiation. We can have an AP kid, four straight A's across the board, checking all the boxes, but they look like every other AP kid out there. That's a challenge. There's kids who are just disengaged from learning, who may be really, really smart kids, super sharp, and if you point them in the right direction, they latch on and they get after it. But they're disengaged from learning and from school because they don't find it relevant, and that's it's hard to fault them for that in a lot of ways. Anxious, depressed, stressed. I mean, geez, that's you guys know it better than I do. That's just the state of where we are today. Kids have uncertain career interests, and this is an important one because the career opportunities of the future are changing very, very quickly. I don't know that I would recommend a student today study to be an accountant and not think that AI, machine learning, or something is going to eat that industry and others and hundreds of others for lunch or dramatically impact it and change it, right? So just being curious about career interests is important. Lack 21st century skills, communication skills for sure. I mean, communication skills have been demolished and destroyed by social media and the lack of face-to-face interaction. It's really impacting kids in every way, from communication to social emotional well-being, and I mean that's a whole different presentation. But geez, yeah, and challenging family dynamics. That's not something. I mean, that's something that you have to manage on some level. You've got parents who are tiger mom and dad, and they're just driving their kid to do what they want them to do, and this kid is along for the ride. And and you folks being sort of in between that often that is absolutely challenging, and I feel for that. Um, I just wanted to show one of the things that so Giant Leap supports IECs. Our program is not it doesn't replace IEC work in any way. It doesn't replace school even. What it does is it prepares kids to be better learners, better students, and better human beings so that when they show up at college or at whatever they're going to do next, they are more successful in every aspect of their lives. And the way we support IECs in particular are we provide a differentiator for college. Our program is essentially a leadership program in a lot of ways, and we'll get into a little bit more detail of how it's a differentiator. But our program, it develops engagement with learning 100%. It's almost impossible for it not to when you see how it works. Improves social emotional well-being. We'll show you some stats, but I think it's something like 85% of the kids who go through our program end up with less anxiety or self-report lower anxiety than when they started it, which is pretty cool because that's not what it was designed for at all, but that it does do that. We introduce teens to dynamic career landscape, so we get them interested and curious about the future, and we start talking about the various career options out there. Um, we'll dig into that. Improves critical thinking, 21st century skills, just critical for life and work. Improves communication skills, and this is strangely one of my favorites. Creates avenues for family conversations and really like growth and bonding in families, right there. And I'll show you a case study at the end about that. That is just it just blows my mind how cool that is. I want to quickly show you a couple of core components of what our program was, and I highlighted the family one because I love it so much. One-on-one coaching, an individualized curriculum. It's focused on strengths. So it starts with a strengths finder assessment. It starts with a mind print, which is a cognitive assessment. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but if you're not, it's really awesome. And it also starts with one of our own sort of homegrown interest assessment. And using that battery of assessments, we know a lot about how this kid processes, what they're interested in, and just a lot of other stuff that helps us design the curriculum that is truly individualized for them. A 21st century toolkit, we give them frameworks and tools to process information, and I mean mental tools to process information, to discriminate between good and bad information and things along those lines. There's challenges built in, the learning journey. Well, I'll show you that in a minute. And the family discourse. So yeah, listen, discourse is something that the world needs more of in every possible way, and is lacking tremendously, sadly. And that's the ability to hold a differing opinion from somebody and remain curious in a conversation. And who doesn't believe that the world, how would I say this? The world needs more of that. Let's put it that way. And it's kind of going away. It's the world is is very polarized, and it's really hard. And we're not doing a great job of teaching kids how to stay curious in the face of disagreement and differing opinions. And that's where magic happens, and that's where learning happens. And what we do here is we give kids and families tools to practice it at home. So every week a student is sent home with a discourse topic, and they learn about each other, and they're given tools to actually to be able to hold differing opinions and stay curious and engaged in the conversation. And what that does for families, I'll show you in a bit. And it's so cool. It's so awesome. Um, I want to quickly walk through this. So our program works like this. It starts with a strength assessment, personalize the curriculum. We do one-on-one weekly coaching with each student, and then there's about 2 hours of weekly lessons and activities, and it culminates in an impact project or a presentation. They interact with peers, and um, yeah, it's just a really fascinating thing. I don't want to spend too much time on our program. I wanted to get you really curious about where the future is and give you some takeaways, but I did want to like share how we're solving it as well. Some of the topics that we talk about. This is important. Um, so these are some of the disruptive exponential technologies, the disruptive technologies that are going to change the world. This is just a handful of them. There's a lot, and these are a lot of the topics that we talk about in our program. And what I wanted to mention and just kind of bring light to is our goal. So like robotics, what if you say, well, I don't know any kids who are super interested in robotics, or my kid isn't interested in robotics. Well, that's fine, but the important point is our program isn't designed to make a kid an expert in robotics or autonomous vehicles or regenerative medicine. It's a great one. Our program is designed to teach them to think consequentially about a world where this is happening, where this is a reality. So think about regenerative medicine. Like, by a show of hands, who is super excited about regenerative medicine? Okay, perfect. Okay, one. We got one. Michelle, love it. Awesome. Yeah, but generally speaking, you're not going to get a lot of like people like waving about it. They just don't know. But what if I were to say, Michelle, imagine a world where we could pause or reverse human aging. Imagine if Putin could live to 1,000. Yeah, that's the face, right? Imagine though, what if Beethoven could, or your favorite musician or artist, or Steve Jobs? I don't know. Um, the point is, you're leaning into the conversation more now than you were when I mentioned regenerative medicine, and that's the point. That's what we do with these kids. We talk about these topics and we frame it in a way that makes it relevant and impossibly interesting to them because we end up talking about what they want to talk about. Like Michelle, are you interested? And I'm talking to you, Michelle, because you waved first. But are you interested in how regenerative medicine, if we could cure aging, how that may impact politics or family dynamics or music or culture or sports, uh, any of these things? You tell us which one you're interested in, and we're going to talk about that as it relates to this over here. And that combination, that intersection there is just gold. That's where these kids absolutely lean in. And if we get them leaning in, we can teach them anything. That's the cool thing. We can teach them absolutely anything, and we do. And so that's the answer to, well, my kid's not interested in X, Y, or Z. Doesn't matter. It's just an access point to engagement. Yeah. Um, and the important thing is those topics, they're going to impact their careers, whether they like it or not. So we should talk about them. Um, as far as differentiation and sort of takeaways, like tactical takeaways from our program, there's two things. We've got a learning journey portfolio. That's this thing on the left, which is a blockchain-based achievement portfolio. All the things the skills that they unlock and the achievements that they achieve in the program, they get documented here, and that's shareable for college admissions. It's shareable on LinkedIn, anywhere they want to share it. And they also get a mastery transcript. I don't know if you're familiar with mastery, but not if you are, because it's cool, awesome. It's really cool. It's a way to give kids to showcase evidence of critical 21st century skills and competencies. And a lot of schools are trying to get away from GPAs and grades for a number of reasons. And this is hopefully kind of make a dent in that. And right now, it's pretty amazing. It's accepted by Harvard, MIT, and hundreds of other schools right now. So that's a good sign for the trajectory of assessing students' capabilities. So I'm happy about that. Who's our program for is a great question that I know you're all asking. Um, it's for eighth grade to high school seniors. So 13 to 18-year olds is where we're focused in our program right now, and we'd like to get it down to sixth grade, but we're just not there yet. And these are really the kids that it's for. It's it's two primary kids for us. It's the AP kid who's checking all the boxes, who's super engaged and super smart, but they don't understand why they're doing what they're doing, or it's really their parent driving the car and they're along for the ride, right? Like we've all seen that kid, and they it doesn't end great often, unfortunately. So this kid, we can change their trajectory, get them re-engaged with learning, and make them understand that it's really relevant to them. And this kid over here, the under-challenged kid, we call him the creative, curious, disengaged kid. So that's the kid who's really smart, but only at whatever he wants to do or she wants to do. So we all know that kid who in school just doesn't care, could care less. But if you point him at YouTube at a particular problem like drones or gaming or who knows, something that he's interested in, he knows more than any teacher that he ever engages with. And there's a lot of those kids. We turn these kids into rock stars, absolute rock stars. Yeah, so those are who we primarily look for. This is something I just want to cover real quick because I think it's important for all of us to just always be aware of this. That teen depression and anxiety are at absolute crisis levels right now. I think I forget the stat exactly, but I think it was last year, 2022, something like 30 or 31% of teens have some type of anxiety disorder, diagnosable disorder. That's like a third of all teens, basically, and that's it was something like 250,000 more than the previous year. So it's going up a lot. And that there's a number of reasons why, and we won't dig into that, but it's real and it's important, and we have to do everything we can to provide antidotes for that. And that's just a reality. Giant Leaps helps. We're not the solution. We're not the antidote. Unfortunately, I wish we were, but we do help with these three things. We give kids self-awareness. We give them purpose, or we help them find their purpose. We don't give anybody purpose, and we help them find connection to their friends, to their coaches, to their family and peers. Um, so yeah, we like to think we're doing our part there. Let's look at a couple of. I'll just open up all these so we can move through it. This is something I'm really, really proud of. 100% of our students that have gone through our program know their strengths better. 100% have had a meaningful discussion as a result of the program, usually with their parents or teacher. 100% rated the inner work activities 4 or higher out of 5. What's inner work? We give kids a real journal and a real pen at the beginning of the program. We send it to them, and they have to write with their fingers. And every week they have to answer some questions about themselves. It's just for them. The coach doesn't look at it. The coach just confirms that they've done it and gets feedback on what the kid learned about themselves, but it doesn't read it. So it's really genuinely for them, and the students surprisingly absolutely love it. They end up learning a lot about themselves and digging into questions that they never would have before, which is really, really cool. And I told you 82%, but it's 85% of the kids who go through our program report lower anxiety afterwards than when they started, which is just awesome. 78% discovered a new interest, which is killer, and 78% learned a new skill that they feel confident using, which disturbs me because I want that to be 100. There's no way there shouldn't be 100, but here we are. Those are the numbers. And I want to show you one last thing about us. This case study. This one was one of our. This is Sasha. She's amazing, a whip smart kid, incredibly smart, very defiant, and her father is also incredibly smart and stubborn and opinionated. I know Lee. And these kids, they love each other, they love each other, but have had the most contentious relationship over the years, just butted heads. And you all know kids and parents that have these relationships. And the point that I want to illustrate with this was these two things. I'm just going to read Sasha's about the program. We don't have these conversations in school. I love the creativity that it brought out in me. I feel like I kind of have a new outlook on the world. And I really enjoyed going back to my dad every 5 minutes and asking him what he thought. And then Lee said, to see my daughter dive into deep topics, critically analyze problems, consider solutions, articulate them, and her thought process made me see a side to her maturity I hadn't seen before. Man, what parent doesn't want a case study about them that looks like this, right? They started as like a really contentious father-daughter relationship, both really smart, and they found an avenue to connect on topics that weren't charged, and they ended up really really engaging on in cool discussions, and it just completely took their relationship to a new level. That's a win. That's just a win. I'm done if that's all that our program does is that. So that's what I wanted to share about our program, and I wanted to share four things, four sort of takeaways that we've seen in the over the hundreds of students that have gone through our program. Well, I'll just bring up the slide. Um, the four principles, or four of the principles of future-proofing teens that we kind of think about here. And keep in mind that a lot of these are focused on parents, but I want you to hear it as IECs because you're sort of the parent counselors and coaches on some level. So yeah, hear it from that lens. Number one, anxiety is not okay. I mean, anxiety today is out of control with kids, but the important thing is anxiety and growth do not coexist. Anxiety and learning do not coexist. And so this is aimed as much at parents as IECs. Do whatever it takes to reduce anxiety for students, top to bottom, and support families any way you can to reduce anxiety at home. And unfortunately, that often takes a lot of looking in the mirror for parents. And I don't know the full scope of who is in this call today or who's watching this. If it's from test prep people to therapy, like there's a lot of under that falls under the IEC hood. But just think about this and think about ways that you can support this because this does no students a service having a high anxiety household, and often enough it's from the top down. Another important one is students are more than their GPA. Studies show unequivocally that grades are not the best predictor of students' success in life. So why do we act like it is or they are? I don't know how you say it. the and our perspective is encourage home being a place where a student is more than their GPA test score, and let them explore, let them figure out who they are. And I'm not sure how exactly the various different types of IECs here can support that, but I encourage you and invite you to think about how you can do this. If we want to raise entrepreneurial, independent people, then we have to encourage failure. We've got to encourage exploration. That's just what it is. That's just what it takes, right? To be agile and adept thinkers. Um, Curiosity rules. True curiosity has no judgment. You can't be curious and judging at the same time. They just don't live together. And the important thing here is their interests are a window into their future. So, you know, real learning doesn't happen without curiosity. It's just as simple as that. So what we try to do is we try to help students build that curiosity muscle and encourage that at every step of the way. And I suggest that you consider and look for ways to do that as well. At every opportunity, help them stay curious. It doesn't matter with what. And the and one of the things that I think about is to not discount their interests as unimportant relative to serious studies. So if a kid's telling you they're interested in gaming, sports, whatever it is, dig into that. What about that is interesting to them? And use that in conversations, and you will learn something about that kid. At the very least, you'll learn what engages them. And that engagement component is that's the beginning, right? So be curious yourself and stay curious and learn how to not shut down conversation when a kid says I'm interested in gaming and you're like, okay, forget that, let's talk about accounting or something, right? This is a really important one. And the next one I love is non-charged conversations. This is more a tip for our parents, but for you as well, you want to build rapport with these kids. If you're directly working with kids, you have to build rapport and you've got to build trust. And you want to shut down a conversation with a kid quickly, ask them what they learned at school today, or ask them about their grades and tell me that they're ready to open up and jam on a conversation with you about all that. So make room in conversations for what we call non-charged conversations. Grades, school, college admissions, those all carry a charge. They all carry a really heavy charge. But what you can do is build rituals, or this is like me talking to parents, like build rituals around in the home where it's off limits to these charged conversations. So like dinner times, or just dinner times on a Sunday, or the drive to school. We're not talking about things that have a charge, and instead we're replacing that with questions and interesting topics. And I don't mean logistics like calendar stuff or sports or things like that. I mean sort of open-ended blue sky topics. And I'll share it with you in an email afterwards, but there's a website called scenariocards.org. And I promise I'll share it in an email. And you can buy all these decks of cards that have these crazy questions. Things like, if you woke up tomorrow with a superpower, what would it be? Or I don't know, just like this hundreds and of odd questions like that. And it may sound cheesy and stupid at first, but I guarantee you, if you I showed this to a parent 2 weeks ago at Fusion Academy, and she emailed me the next morning. What she told me that night was, I drive my kid to school every day. He puts his headphones on, and I don't hear, and that's it. And he would get to school, and we haven't talked. He just doesn't want to engage. But what I did this time was I asked him one of these wacky questions, and we talked the whole way to school and had just a really interesting conversation. That's a win. That's a huge win. That's the first step in like building rapport and trust, and a parent showing a kid, or an IEC showing a kid that they care about them as a person. And then from there, like, that's the foundation of all the other good things you're trying to do, right? Um, so those are a couple of tips that I hope are useful, and I hope you can apply those. And if you know them already, awesome, you're killing it. But I hope you got something from this whole trajectory of the talk. And this is just one last slide on us. This is our sort of mission. We want to develop present-minded, forward-thinking, intellectually curious, and principled leaders of tomorrow. The world is running low on leaders, and the technologies that we're developing are more and more godlike every day, unfortunately or fortunately, who knows. But we need leaders who are capable of of championing these technologies in safe, productive, and healthy ways for our whole society. So to lean into this, I would say, I think it's important. Um, I'm gonna send. I'll send this presentation to everybody. Oh, I'll mention one quick thing. Our program is regularly 1,200 for the 8 week. It's in 8 week modules. But through for IECs, if you use this code, it'll be 900 for any families you refer that use this code. Um, and yeah, this is my wife and I, and there's that. I'll share this all with you at the end. And here we are. If anybody has any questions, just raise your hand and I'll unmute you and we can chat. But I hope this was, just as a way of saying thank you. I really appreciate your time today. It means a lot to be able to get to present these ideas and hope you learned something from them. I don't see. I don't know if I have the chat open. If anybody's asking in the chat, let me take a look. I can hear. Are we are recording. If we didn't have dialysis machines, could we? Oh, interesting questions. If we didn't have, oh, Tracy, I'm going to ask you to unmute. There you go.
Hi.
Hi.
This is amazing. Thank you so much. I'm an IEC in Austin, Texas, and I work with students with learning disabilities. My question is, my students are so busy. This would be an amazing summer enrichment opportunity, and I'm wondering when your modules are scheduled, if there are summer opportunities, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes a great program for the summer for sure. It's just there's just less schedule conflicts, and it's for rolling. So it's 1-to-1, so a student's completely rolling.
Ah, okay.
Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, I think Mindy asked share the code again. It's IECA, but I'll share it in an email, I promise, with a link. Does the program work for kids who are on the spectrum? Um, yes, yes, it absolutely does. I'm going to caveat that with depending on where on the spectrum that they really do. I mean, yeah, we'll just caveat in with that, and that's an individual conversation, I believe, but depends on how and where they are on the spectrum. Yes. How many hours does a kid need to spend on the program weekly? About anywhere between 1.5 and 2.5. So it's a 45-minute session with their coach every week, and that's included in that bucket of time. And then after that, there's some activities that they do online, some activities they do offline, and activities that they'll do by just like having a conversation with their family and thinking about things. Um, what was the scenario card games? It's called scenariocards.org. Yeah. Let's see. Any other questions in the chat? And if anybody has a question, just raise your hand. And if you are raising your hand and I can't see you, I don't see anybody else with a hand raised. So that's okay. Share the code. Awesome. Time commitment from students and associated fees. I hope I covered. Did I cover that, Tracy? Was that covered? And how long have you been working with students? For about 2.5 years. Yeah, Nancy asked, how long have we been working with students? So about 2.5 years. And my wife has been working with students for 14 years from now, starting in Teacher America and then building La Jolla Learning Works in San Diego to four locations. And she just sold that last year to found this with myself. Who are your coaches and how are they trained? Great question. Our coaches are often high school counselors, either ex-high school counselors or current high school counselors, sometimes high school teachers, or ex-high school teachers. And they've got various training in like education credentials, but they go through our training process, which is pretty extensive and unique. And I'm happy to walk anybody through that if you want to set up a call with me. I'd love to show you that. Let's see. Do students work with you for more than one series? Yes, about 30% of the students sign up for more than one module. Not at a time, but they'll do one module. And the way it works is they'll do one module because their parent tells them to do it, and they're sort of like semi bought into it. But by the end of the module, they're the ones signing up for the next one. And it's really it's really cool when that happens. Is there any way for us IECs to be involved in the program with our students? Yes, absolutely. We are simply a provider that yeah, her question was, is there any way for IECs to be involved in the program with our students? Or are you simply a provider that we might refer to them? Yes, we're a provider that you would refer to us, but we would love to have you engaged in the process with in the program. So you could be on the session report. So every week, when a coach meets with a student, they generate session reports. You could be on that list of session reports and engage in the conversation with the coach and the student and the parent as well. And we would love that. Um, do you find that many of the students did the program more than once? Yes. Yeah, I answered that. IEC from California. How do you include this with coaches who have some students who can't seem to set aside the time to research colleges and fill out their own coach requirements? Claudia, how do you add this onto what is already task? Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's a great question. That's what we're. So the question is, how do students fit this in on top of already overscheduled, overcommitted calendar? Um, how do we add this on top of what is already tasks that get pushed back? Um, Great question. That's our biggest fight is time arbitrage. As simple as that. Like we are fighting against every other thing that parents want their kids to do. The thing that's really interesting is once we get a kid in one session or two, it doesn't become a have to do. It becomes a want to do. It's counterintuitive and it might not seem like it because this is sort of academic in some on some level, but I promise you the experience to students isn't that. They don't feel like that. And I'll share some testimonials and some video testimonials from our students afterwards. And they're like, we were surprised at how much this is not like school, or we don't do anything like this in school. It shouldn't feel like that, and it's not at all. There's no tests, there's no memorization, there's no stress. We're talking about what kids want to talk about, and then making them learn about things that they're interested in. It's pretty cool and it works. Can you expand on the final report project? Is it student generated? What is the purpose of it? Yeah, it can be a number of different things. Often it's a presentation. So the way a module works is it's an 8 week long experience and they get introduced to a topic. Let's just use regenerative medicine because Michelle and I were talking about that. Um, they get introduced to the topic and they explore the challenges and the opportunities. They get a baseline understanding of what's happening in that space. And then they explore the challenges and opportunities in that space in the future. So in 10 or 20 years, what is that going to look like? What are the opportunities there and what are the challenges? And then then we give them a lot of critical thinking lessons along the way to just find information, discriminate information, and come up with a solution. We call it a bright future, but come up with a bright future where their strengths and interests intersect with this potential outcome of the world, and they paint like a picture of that. And they do it in a really methodical way. And their presentation is an illustration of their learning journey over the course of the 8 weeks, like what they came to the table thinking and experiencing and what they left with and how and the delta between those two things. And they give that presentation to a group of peers, to their coach. That's one sort of potential. There's lots of other things. It could turn into an interview with a significant figure. It can turn into to starting a company. It can turn into a lot of things, and it is very student led from the beginning. Is there a related question? Is there a better time for kids to sign up for the program, like during summer? It works really well as a summer program. The right time is any time that a kid is available. Really, when it comes down to it, we've had kids that signed up in November, so they went like across the holidays, and there was a couple of weeks of pause where and that was totally fine. It didn't impact them at all. A lot of kids did it over the summer, and it was fantastic over the summer. Um, but if kids can fit it in during the school year, it layers on top of school really well, and it also makes the change in the student more visible. to the parents and to the teachers, well, to the teachers in particular, because it's easy to say like, well, last year Jimmy was like this and this year he's this way, but you know that's hard to attribute to anything besides growth maybe. But in the program, what we see is the kids that go through our program, like the 8 weeks, um, we have parents talking to teachers and their teachers saying Jimmy or Sasha is asking better questions in class or is more engaged or asking difficult questions in class or things like that. And to be able to illustrate those very real changes like very quickly is very powerful. Um, is what is involved in, let's see, related question, what is involved in an application? Can we see the whole form? Yeah, absolutely. If you go to I'll share it with you afterwards. Oh, why do I have Fusion here? I'll share it with you afterwards. It's just the enrollment form, giantleapslearning.com/enroll, and you can go through the whole form, and look at it all. That's the applica essentially the application enrollment form. And let's see what the question was. What's involved in the application? So that's how you apply and kind of get going. And then after that, once you've done that and the student is ready to go, then there's a number of assessments that the student would take, like the Strengths Finder, the Mind Print, and our interest assessment. And we also give Strengths Finder to the parents as well, because we want the whole family to have a common language of strengths in the house. We feel it's really important. Do you offer scholarships? We do. Yes, and that's on an individual basis. So any family that is really interested and thinks that this would be valuable to them, I suggest that they get in touch with us and we'd happy to discuss that with them. Yeah. Um, all right. Let's see. Do you ever turn students away? One place says apply, the other says enroll. Great question, or great note on that. I think that's more marketing terminology than like how it works. The question is, do we turn students away? We have. As a rule, we try not to. Um, but we can't force a kid to do this program. And if we try, it's just not going to work. And we're going to end up with a parent who wants a refund, or we're going to end up with a parent who's just pissed off at us for some reason. And if a kid is just dead set, like, I am not doing this, this does not sound interesting to me at all. Even after that, one of the first things we do is like have an interview with the kid as part of the sort of like engagement process. And if they're like, nope, not into it, then we would say, okay, then it's probably not for you. We're not going to allow you to continue forward, even if your mom or dad is saying you must, um, as it really does require buy-in, and we really want buy-in from the parents as well, that they're going to support and engage the kid through this. One of the things, and it may seem counterintuitive or maybe not, because you guys are in the position that you're in, but my wife was had learning centers for 13 years, and she worked in La Jolla, Del Mar, Encinitas. I don't know if you know where those places are in California, but they're not cheap places to live, right? So, and the point is, these are parents with resources, and oftentimes what she saw was parents offloading their sort of parental responsibility, or outsourcing that to you guys and to her, and it just doesn't work. That we're not babysitters, and our program requires family engagement. So if they're not willing to do that, then they're not the family for us. Is our strengths finder? Yes, the Gallup product. That's one of the ones that we use for students. Scholarships, I think I got all the questions. Is there a better time? I think that was all the questions. Any other questions? No? Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Well, good deal. Well, thank you all. Listen, I'm going to follow up with an email with the recording of this and some resources, so you'll be able to get the code and all that stuff. And if you want a conversation, if you want to learn more about it, you'll get a link in the email to just book a call with me. And one of the things that we've done for a lot of IECs is done a presentation to their families. So Michelle, if you've got families that you work with and you want to, hi Michelle, if you want us or me to do a presentation for the families in your circle, or just families that you gather, we'd love to do that, and we hope it's helpful and informative to them. So if that's something you're interested in, And we'd love to do that as well. Do we use a career match assessment? We do not. We've been exploring purchasing Purpose Match. I don't know if you know Purpose Match, but we've been exploring like buying them and bringing their product in. But it's not exactly a career match assessment. But if you have suggestions for any, I'd love to have a conversation with you, Mindy. Yeah. Awesome. Who else? Mindy. Yeah, let's see. Gina said, "Is the program 8 consecutive weeks, or how do you handle cancellations?" Yes, typically and ideally, and in the best case scenario, it's 8 consecutive weeks. But schedules are what schedules are, and yeah, it often, if we overlap a holiday or something, we get that that's just not going to work. So what we do is we just extend the program. We just extend the program. Yeah, no problems there. If we Michelle asked, if we send a student to you, can we share the results of the StrengthsFinder assessment with each other? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That makes it super easy. Yeah, thank you. Can it be used for first year college kids? Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's we haven't targeted them from a marketing perspective, but yeah, very much so. There's nothing at all that makes this specifically directed for high school students. This would work for adults. For I mean, it's incredibly flexible. It's really really cool. Um, yeah. Let's see. I think that's. Did I get all those questions? Career Match 8 program. Thank you much. I love it. Love it. Well, I hope you guys really got something from this presentation, and that you found it interesting, and the future stuff really, um, really, yeah, really like it gets me curious. I just did a TED talk last week on this very topic. I can't wait to share that. It'll be launched in or published in about 6 weeks or so, and I'm happy to email you guys with that when that's ready. But sort of the topic is the broken promise of education, and I'm real proud of that. One more mention. You mentioned AI. What do we use it for? Mindy asked what we use AI for. So we use that to scale the personalization of the curriculum. Right now, a lot of what our curriculum does. So every student has a completely different path through the program, and it would take a lot of human effort to make that cost effective. And what our AI does is it determines the best path for a student through the program using those that battery of assessments that we start with. Yeah, I hope that helps. Yeah, thanks, Michael. Awesome, awesome. Yeah, well, I'm really honored and glad to have been here. Thank you. Hi, Nina. It's good to see you. There's a lot of like familiar faces today. It was super cool, and I appreciate all you guys being here. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. We have everybody. Thank you. You too, Nina. Awesome. Yeah, well, I'm gonna log off, and I'll follow up with an email and a recording. And if you have any questions, and if you want to just